Hey, greetings everyone. It is GleeCon, and I am back once again, despite a heat wave running through. It is when I come in here, cutting off all the fans and popping on all the lights, I can really feel it. So if you live in the southern half of the United States, whether you're in the east or west, you too can imagine what's going on. It's hot. That's not going to stop us from bringing the content to you guys. We're here with another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we ran through some quests, really a quest with our hunter, our dwarven hunter in Red Ridge Mountains, where he killed an old leader, and we kind of ran down some of the stuff he did off camera because he's doing the same set of quests that I did a little bit of with our human priest and then with the human paladin, and then Maleficent will be bringing that kind of trifecta home in a few episodes. We've also been reading the final Dungeons and Dragons book, and that's what we're going to do some more of today. It's called Dark Factions. It's a campaign setting. They first had a series of books which we read on this channel. Check it out in some of the previous episodes, where it was called Warcraft, the role-playing game. And then right before the World of Warcraft dropped, they decided to, along with that, let's make a Dungeons and Dragons kind of reboot. And they did World of Warcraft, the role-playing game, and they've done a ton of books in that. We've finished almost all of them. This one so far it's called Dark Factions, and it's been about some of the other kind of independent or darker factions if you wanted to play them, or at least have in-depth NPCs as them if you still played 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons, which you're missing out. If you played 3rd edition over 4th, I can't blame you. But if you're not playing 5th, you are missing out. It's much better than anything since the Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe even 2nd edition was pretty good era. On our very last episode, we read the 4th chapter, which was about the different races' perspectives on magic. We're going to give a similar treatment to technology in this chapter 5, which they've titled "The Random Explosions Will Continue Until Morale Improves." So stay a while and listen, or there will be more random explosions. This one's much shorter because both within Dungeons and Dragons and canonically within World of Warcraft, technology just plays so much of a smaller role than magic does, and it's relegated at best to whatever the engineering profession can do, which in Classic is pretty much if you're playing meta, the only profession you can really have. And again, whereas magic is the lifeblood of most of the classes in the game, and from a Dungeons and Dragons perspective, same kind of deal. Technology requires a certain amount of infrastructure for support. While just about anyone can take up magic with a bit of training and natural aptitude, you can't pursue science without some means to build things and the natural resources to make this possible. I guess okay. If you're considering you're just a druid that was born a little baby druid and you just kind of tap into nature magic. Thus, many of the independent races and factions described in this book either don't use technology at all or have only the barest access to it. That's true. Think about Naga, think about Murlocs, think about Gnolls. That's another reason why this is going to be a much shorter chapter. By far, the largest users of technology among the independents are the goblins, and they're not even truly independent. They are now horde. Some say they invented the art, although the gnomes and possibly dwarves would contest this. Certainly, goblins are among Azeroth's most enthusiastic users of science. They produce more research, devices, and inventions than all the other independent factions combined by far. With the exception of the Dark Iron Dwarves, most other independent races see technology as little more than a curiosity, if they understand it at all. And we're noticing a theme here because that's also no longer a neutral, independent faction. Even the Naga and the Pandaren, both relatively advanced societies, merely dabble in scientific pursuits. Although individual exceptions always exist, Azeroth's various races view technology in different ways. So now we're going to break down a little blurb for each race. So beginning with the Dark Iron Dwarves. Dark Iron Dwarves are no strangers to technology, embracing it as a welcome complement to the arcane arts. However, like orcs, they look at science as a way to gain an advantage over an enemy in war. When Dark Irons make a new discovery or invention, their first thought is, how can I use this to defeat my foes? They rarely, if ever, design machines simply to better their lives. Ooh, that ice cold water is good. Dark Iron Dwarves are fond of weapon tech mods. They use all the commonly available devices of this type, having acquired the schematics through stealth, guile, ingenuity, or bribery. In addition, they employ a number of rare tech mods, some of which are found below. Dark Iron Dwarf inventions include the Acid Bullet, Pressure Injector, and Drill Crawler. I've been smoking and smoking meats, not like doing drugs or smoking cigarettes or anything. Um, I've been smoking meats uh, with some hot beef injection all day long. I've been making, since I got up, just racks and racks of different kinds of ribs. I just ran out of gas. I tapped it. I thought I had a second tank. I tricked myself, but that's what that made me think of. So, yeah, I got about 30 pounds of ribs and some other meats cooked up, ready to distribute amongst my progeny. All right, Dragon Spawn. Most Dragon Spawn disdain the use of technology, considering it inferior to magic and a waste of resources. Those rare few who dabble in the scientific arts do so either to protect themselves, enhance their unique physical attributes, eliminate their vulnerabilities, or counter specific technological items employed by their enemies. Dragon Spawn often perceive tinkers, even those of their own race, as unusual, strange, or downright mad, and they are. Dragon Spawn devices include the artificial tail, like a little prosthetic. Goblins. Goblins don't have a tremendous number of truly skilled engineers, primarily because they tend to blow themselves up. It's said that there are old goblins and there are goblin tinkers, but there are no old goblin tinkers. While not 100% accurate, there is truth to this adage. Many goblin inventors are bizarre or have no apparent inventions or have no apparent use. A goblin often creates things just to see what happens and discards her creation when she can't think of a way to make money with it. Some of the most well-known devices in the world came from the trash heaps of goblin inventors who didn't know they had something anybody would want. Goblin creations include the Sphere of Chaos and the Divine-Amatic Rod. Murlocs. Murlocs hate and fear technology. They perceive science as a form of dangerous, destructive magic that should be destroyed whenever possible. No sane Murloc learns the Tinker's art. Even if one chooses to do so, the primitive race lacks the means to construct anything other than the simplest of devices. Not to mention, imagine trying to cook stuff up underwater. Like electricity? Not a good idea. Naga. Naga dwell almost exclusively underwater, a fact that makes technological research difficult. Most devices require burning some sort of fuel, typically phlogiston, which is hard to arrange in liquid environments. Still, Naga build metal tools and weapons, so they have the capability to construct underwater forges and the like. Even so, technology is new to the Naga, and they haven't yet explored its full ramifications. In Naga society, technology is considered a poor substitute for magic. The problems associated with using scientific equipment underwater discourage its use by all but the most persistent tinkers. Those who do employ technology take steps to protect their devices from seawater and extremes of pressure. Thus, a typical Naga device is exceptionally sturdy and bulky. Naga inventions include the Bolt Stabilizer. Curious as to what the heck that is. Pandaren. The Pandaren aren't particularly good inventors, but they know a good thing when they see it. Rather than learn the intricacies of technology from the ground up, they prefer to learn about specific types of devices, such as weapons or vehicles. Once they know how to create those, they focus on that particular subset. They almost always build known devices rather than create new ones, with one glaring exception: brewing equipment. That's what I was thinking. Like, they're going to be creative when it comes to that. Oh, I guess that's a dragon. It's a terrible drawing. Sorry, artist. Pandaren, good job. The Dark Iron Dwarf, he looks cool, but that is a terrible looking draconid dragon. I don't even know what they're called. I'm thrown by that face. Looks like a weird scaly gorilla. From the first day they discovered the existence of technology, Pandaren tinkers have sought to craft items capable of producing or improving alcoholic beverages. While some Pandaren claim that scientifically created brews are inferior or somehow corrupted, those who enjoy such creations say it's the taste that matters. Also, technically, it's all science. It's a cooking science. Any type of brewing is science. While most Pandaren brewmaking gear is focused solely on producing beverages, a few exceptional devices deserve attention. These include the Instant Brewmaker, Hong's Throat Burner, and the Alchemist's Stirrer. Quillbore. Quillbor are a primitive race with little knowledge of technology. When shown a scientific device, they see it as another type of magic item. To them, there is little distinction between the two arts, and technology is far too difficult to learn. Although a few rare Quillbor dabble in the new magic, none have yet produced any noteworthy inventions. Yeah, makes sense. Satyrs. Satyrs despise technology. To them, science represents all that is wrong with the humanoid races of Azeroth. No sane satyr would ever utilize a technological device. I guess because they're so into magic, but it seems silly. It seems like the Burning Legion would be a win at all costs kind of thing. Oh yeah, you can see at the bottom of my screen, it was like near record. And it's been just raining and storming day after day, and still near record temps. Tuskar are like Quillbor and Murlocs, a simple people with little in the way of technology. They barely even know that science exists. The few devices they've seen are incomprehensible to them. Even so, Tuskar have the potential to be tinkers. Perhaps one day they will join the gnomes and goblins as some of the world's most skilled engineers, but that day is far in the future if it ever comes at all. I mean, and if you think about their bridges, their elevators, their their fishing gear, cooking stuff, they definitely, I would say, that needs to be amended based on what we know of the Tuskar now, because they're so much more of a prominent race in the game. So they're ripe. I do not know why we haven't had a Tuskar race. There's just certain races that's almost unconscionable that they haven't given them to us. Why do we not have the Tuskar? It just doesn't make sense. All right, so that, other than perhaps a sidebar flavor text, the rest of this chapter is going to be just quick rundowns. So starting with a section on tech mods, which is further broken down into type of tech mod, beginning with weapon tech mods. So we have, looks like about 5 or 6 of these. So that bolt stabilizer is a set of special immobile fins, vaguely in the shape of a propeller that fasten to the front of a crossbow bolt. The stabilizer causes the bolt to travel straighter than usual underwater. Naga and their minions often employ devices of this sort to ambush unwary travelers. So this is basically a tech device that allows them to shoot crossbows underwater. And then there's a greater bolt stabilizer, which is just a better version of it. And let's read a little sidebar. Garnet tugged at his helmet, adjusting the eye slot so he could get a better look at his opponent. The goblin warrior was dressed in a simple breastplate with chain gloves and an iron-bound sabatons. In one hand, he held a curved scimitar, while in the other he carried a shield nearly 3/4 his own size. Garnet smiled. This would be an easy fight. The gladiator tournament here in Gadgetzstan had attracted some of the best brawlers on Kalimdor, including some powerful-looking orcs and tauren. As a human, Garnet always felt slightly intimidated in the presence of such feral-looking fighters. There was nothing dangerous about a goblin. Or was there? As he talked with his own trainer, the goblin made a strange motion under his shield. The steel disc suddenly lit up with dancing sparks of electricity. Garnet frowned. Technology! Well, he had the counter to that, the gladiator thought, running a hand along the edge of his massive two-handed sword. One mighty blow ought to take care of that shield. One thing he knew about tech, didn't stand up to repeated beatings. Garnet took his position near the center of the fighting circle. A few cheers sounded, but for the most part, the stands were empty. The real crowds wouldn't show up until the second day, when the pretenders had been whittled out of the competition. He was going to be there, even if he had to mangle a few goblin engineers in the process. With the ring of a bell, the battle began. Garnet advanced while the goblin danced away. The little creature didn't seem slowed by his bulky armor. In fact, he seemed strangely quick. Probably more technological claptrap. Finally, Garnet got the opening he was looking for. Charging forward, he swung his trusty sword in a mighty arc, driving toward the goblin's shield. He hit, taking a chunk out of the protective wall, but he recoiled in pain as a surge of electricity coursed up his arms. Even as Garnet cursed, the goblin made a feint with his scimitar and plunged forward, hammering Garnet with the shield. Sparks flew, and the human warrior grimaced in agony. Okay, he thought, backing away to catch his breath. Maybe this won't be so easy after all. Alright, continuing with our weapon mods. There's a dark silencer. This is a dark iron tech that it produces a puff. Oh, so not only is it like a silencer as you would expect with a gun, but it also creates a puff of black smoke, which allows them to cloud the barrel. I'm guessing. So it's basically creating a cloud of darkness that you could continue to stealth in. Oh, that's cool. So it's just saying you would anybody trying to detect where someone's sniping from is going to have a much harder time. The pressure injector. This is another dark iron invention. It's a bunch of tubes attached to a tank and a hand pump, and is attached to a long barrel gun, and it it just makes the gun shoot stronger. So that's all. It's a pressure. It injects more pressure into the barrel of the gun so that it shoots the bullets faster. And then there's only one other mod, which is a armor tech mod called the Shield Sparker, and this is what we just read about in the flavor text. It makes like a shock shield. All right, so there are also Steam Armor enhancements, a couple of them added for this book. Steam Armor is a big thing that we read about in some of the previous books in this series. I guess you could make yourself a full-on Steam Warrior. Sounds cool in concept. So there's the Portable Transformer. It alleviates so it basically allows you to fold down your armor into the size of a backpack, and then you could unfold it and wear it on. That's cool. And the Trundling Treads. So it's normally, if you were wearing big, heavy steam armor in like mushy ground, it would be very hard, and this allows you to do that much easier. However, you take additional penalties to jumping and swimming. All right, so then there's a class of just general. These aren't mods. These are full-on new tech devices. There's the Acid Bullet, crystal-encased hollow point that shatters and spreads acid. There's the Alchemist Stirrer that we read about. It looks like a thick fountain pen that has some sampling holes at the end that you would dip into your thing to stir with. And the other is a clear glass bulb. So, you basically stir and it will light up to tell you what type of potion. Is it a low-level potion? Is it an acid, a poison? Is it what school of magic? Is it a healing potion? So that's kind of neat. Okay, the artificial tail that we read about, the dragon spawn thing, it extends their limbs. So it's not like a prosthetic so much as it is like a go-go gadget tail. So it adds extra, it slows down the user but gives them extra armor class, and they can also swing it and use it like a bludgeoning weapon, but it does require phlogiston fuel. Okay, so here we have another little bit of flavor text. Okay, what do we have? Asked Colmier, looking disdainfully at the dark tunnel leading downward. Bugs, replied Thrum. The dwarven explorer twisted his beard with thick, meaty fingers. Lots of 'em. Big ones. They looked at each other for a couple of seconds. The human hunter finally raised an eyebrow. Glink? Yeah. Glink, I'll go fetch him. He'll love this. The dwarf moved off. Colmier waited, watching the tunnel and listening to the rustling coming from within. Fortunately, the insects didn't seem to like the light, or they might well have already swarmed out of the ancient tomb. After a few minutes, Thrum returned, bringing his goblin assistant in tow. Clink was barely paying attention to his surroundings, instead fooling with a huge weapon with 6 wide-open barrels. As Colmier watched, the goblin shoved something into each of these tubes. Ready? He announced in a high-pitched voice. Thrum pointed at the hole in the ground. Down there, he insisted. There's a big room filled with bugs. Clear 'em out. Will do. The goblin hurried forward, disappearing into the hole. A few seconds passed, and then there was a kind of thump. An instant later, 6 explosions boomed, illuminating the tunnel in rapid-fire flares of light. Colmier and Thrum exchanged glances. Is that it? Asked the human. Usually there are more explosions, replied Thrum, reaching for his mace. A moment later, the goblin emerged, covered in black soot. His weapon dangled limply in his hands. He looked up at the other two and shook his head. Oops, said the goblin sheepishly as the first giant angry beetle emerged behind him. That just goes to show one, probably a device we're about to read about, but 2, the fact that tech often fails, which is one of the reasons why developing a campaign or character all around something that has an inherent chance of failing often is a tough sell for me. I'm not a gambler. I don't do a lot of stock market stuff. And I wouldn't want to use tech devices that have a built-in chance of failure. All right. So that maybe is the cluster rocket launcher, I believe, because it says it's got 6 immense cylinders and it shoots rockets out of it. That's it. Doesn't really say a lot. It just says takes some time to load and it shoots grid, basically fire blasts. The Divinomatic rod that we read about is a hollow rod with a crystal tip that has copper wires inside, and then it has prongs, metal prongs at the base, and when it activates, electricity sparks about the prongs. So it's like a water divining rod. It detects certain substances, though it looks like maybe not just water. Yeah, it can use can find alcohol, alloys, salt, granite, yada yada yada. So it's like a more powerful divining rod. Giant turtle battle sub. That's cool. Yeah, it's one of the most notorious weapons of the Second War. That's true. So one of the things the goblins used. I'm glad that we're finally getting this in this game. It only took the whole book series before they're going to let you actually build the tech device that would allow you to make a sub out of a giant turtle like the Horde does in Warcraft 2. It includes a short-range cannon or rocket launcher. It fits atop a live turtle. It has a mental control rig. That is awesome. That's actually pretty cool. You use tech device instead of ride when you're doing your checks. It does take a phlogiston. If it malfunctions, it just can't pressurize. So it can't be a sub. It would be like swimming on the top of the water, or the person inside would die. You'd be making your own headlines, like we've been seeing all these sub headlines the past couple weeks. All right, drill crawler is a dark iron device. Also, this is something we've seen a lot in the game. Oh no, this is a projectile that drills. So it's not the drilling devices that they use. That's a racial ability that actually lets you port to certain areas. It is a drill. It's a bullet that drills and then continues to penetrate and do more damage and more damage as it continues to drill down after you're shot by it. Hong's Throatburner was the Pandaren one we read about. Anyone that likes Hong's famous brews, which I think we read about, if not in this book, then in a previous book, you attach the Throatburner to your head or to your helmet, and it extends. It's basically like one of those college beer helms that you would wear, and you put the straws and you can drink that thing right out of your head, right out of your hat. Yeah, so basically just lets you as a free action drink whatever's in there. And then maybe if you're doing like a flame breath where you have to spit your brew or something like that, it would make that easier, but it's kind of silly. Yeah, just having to wear the helmet itself is pretty silly. There's the Instant Brewmaker, another one of the Pandaren things. It just allows, it takes a few rounds to set up, but then it allows you to make your brews faster, I'm guessing, including potions. And we have another flavor text. So let's read some about this. Janelle swung, cleaving the head off the metallic construct. The clockwork goblin bobbed aimlessly for a moment before collapsing in a heap of broken parts. Where are all these things coming from? Wondered Chandra from close by. Her short staff blazed with orange energy as she called down fire on another pair of the noisy, erratically moving constructs. No idea. The elven warrior took a moment to catch her breath, wiping a swath of white hair from her brow. From the corridor ahead came the clanking of more clockwork guardians, growing steadily closer. This tinker of yours is really starting to annoy me. Yes. Chandra moved up to the opening and peered inside. At least 6 more goblins approached, ambling noisily along, brandishing their crude spears as though they were clubs. Here, let's clear some of this away. Maybe he's in the next room and we can put a stop to this. The gnome arcanist uttered a few incomprehensible phrases, and a blast of frost extended from her stubby hand. The goblins in the hallway toppled, leaving the area suddenly silent. Janelle didn't waste any time. She hurried forward, moving to the open doorway. There she stopped, suddenly holding her sword tighter. Ahead in the open auditorium stood a miniature factory, clanking and grinding as steam poured out of its cooling vents. At least a dozen more clockwork guardians surrounded the facility. Inside, a goblin tinker feverishly worked the controls, cackling madly. "Get them, my pretties!" he yelled. "Destroy! Kill!" The clockwork monstrosities lurched forward. Now that, to me, is a call out to some of the quests that you do in Burning Crusade Classic, the Outlands. You actually see some of that in action. I can think of one in the Twisted Nether, or whatever it's called, Area 52. I don't know. Area 52 is the city, I think, within Nether something. Now I'm drawing a blank on what it's called. One of the final regions up there, the one that's like all the islands and has all the mana core factories and everything. That is also described right here. It's called a pocket factory, and it's a tiny little facility capable of creating a small army of clockwork goblins. I believe it's bombs that is in the Outland quest that I can think of. Yeah, it's just going into details. It's describing that the machine is full of mostly assembled little mini goblins. They have detonation time, so they are explosive. They can be programmed to treat some people as friendly. Let's continue to read about this flavor text. Chaumet advanced relentlessly, cleaving his way through the tide of goblins trying to stab at him with their pitiful short swords. Each time he swung, 3 of the pathetic creatures seemed to fall away, wounded and bleeding. He almost felt sorry for them. They were only slaves doing their master's bidding. Their leader, Krytok, stood behind them, urging them on, endlessly firing his repeating pistol at Chaumet's allies. Fortunately, as a gnomish warrior, Chaumet stood no taller than the goblin slaves, making him a difficult target in the midst of melee. His companions, 3 humans and a night elf, made fun of his small stature, but sometimes it came in handy. I love gnome warriors. One of the first tanks I ever made was a mecha gnome warrior, or at least one of the first ones I took to like mythics. Several explosions sounded. Chaumet saw through the haze of battle several groups of slaves fall away. The mage was making herself useful, he thought, forcing himself in the now open direction. Suddenly, the veritable wall of goblins opened up and he could see Krytok clearly. The evil goblin laughed and hurled something over Chaumet's head towards the rest of his party. He didn't wait to see what would happen, instead charging forward. An instant later, a blast of arcane energy swept away the remaining slaves. It was just him and Krytok now. He swung. Krytok, still wielding his rifle, tried at the last to use it as a shield. Chaumet's blade cleaved right through the frail wooden stock, driving deep into the goblin's flesh. With a final squeal, the tinker toppled and fell. Chaumet took a few deep breaths and turned back to his friends. He stopped and rubbed his eyes, wondering if perhaps he'd taken one too many blows to the head. The mage was 10 feet tall. Of the others, one was now a murloc, still dressed in priest's robes, while Milana had become a cloud of wispy, Milana-shaped vapor. Where the night elf hunter had stood, there was now a giant rat. "Don't ask," muttered the mage, staring down at him while trying not to bump her head on the ceiling. That must be a gun we're about to read about that has like all kinds of magic bullets, like magic beans. The Sphere of Chaos. That must be what it is. So, we'll look at that in just a second. Yeah, so the Sphere of Chaos is a crystalline globe. It comes with all kinds of random stuff. And when it breaks open, you just smash it. And then everyone within a 20-foot radius has to try to not avoid the burst. And if they do, they get one of these effects. You could be shrunken or enlarged, blinded or deafened, changed into another like humanoid or to a complete polymorphed creature, gaseous form, a buff or a frailty of one of your stats, the confusion spell, dimension door teleporting you to a random spot, dazed, stunned, or paralyzed, damaged or healed, or any other random spell picked out of the player's handbook. So good or bad. So that's kind of cool. And that does make for a good little flavor text thing. That's cool. All right, so we finished the tech. We've also finished really the meat of what this book provides in terms of like building rules. The next two chapters will be the ones that we spend the most time on, and they'll be the ones that are most interesting because they will be solid lore chapters. In the past, I've broken those down into lots of miniature sections. I may continue to do so. We're going to just see how long each one is. But I think it's worth it rather than rushing, because otherwise, if I try to squeeze them all in, I might end up making a 2 hour long video where I'm reading and I'm rushing, and I'd prefer to make shorter ones where I read 20 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. So that will take us through 6 and 7. I know that we will have a monstrous compendium in one of the chapters towards the end. Those are decent. We'll have one that's an adventure, and I'm forgetting one. So we'll have one in there as well. But for the most part, all the rest of these should be more interesting from a lore perspective. Definitely the next series that we'll have. But I appreciate everybody so much for watching and listening. I hope you enjoyed it as we continue to romp our way through all of the different things on Lore of Warcraft.